So scary. All right, we're live. The YouTube is always so delayed. How's it look? Oh, something just fell behind me. That's never good. Please hold. Technical difficulties. I have too many things plugged in. There we go. Should I just let it hang? Alright. We got things to do here. Don't unplug on me again. Alrighty. So, new setup. I think it looks pretty fine. There's like a little glare in that TV screen. But I mean, come on. How picky are we going to get here? Alrighty, let's see. Let's record the pod. Last step. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. Episode 90 of the Dugout. Dave's Dugout. We are approaching just 10 more episodes till the centennial. Is that the right word? The centennial episode of Dave's Dugout. I can't believe that. That's how you know it's official. That's when you look up a podcast. You're like, man, Joe Rogan's got like 239 episodes. Dave's Dugout's got 101 episodes. It's legit. That's where my brain goes. I don't know if anybody else. So, if you are listening to the podcast, I appreciate you. If you're watching live, I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. All of this is much needed. Today, as a heads up, is going to be, let's see, mostly college basketball. If you're a fan of the podcast, if you're a listener of the podcast, you know college basketball is my favorite sport. I am obviously a sports nut, but I didn't mean to rhyme that. But college basketball, if I had to pick one, is my favorite. And obviously we all know March Sadness, whatever episode that was on the podcast. I was devastated. Not as much as players and athletes, but, there's that. So, I am super excited tonight and want to do this at night. Usually I do it midday. Maybe if you guys like it, I'll start doing this on my dinner break, which is around this time every night. I know it's 2 hours later on the East Coast, so maybe this is getting too late. I don't know. Let me know. 7:30 Mountain Time, so 9:30 Eastern. I don't know. That's when primetime shows are on the East Coast anyway, so I don't think it's too late. Sometimes I could probably do it an hour earlier, but had to get the rankings done. So that's what I'm going to tease is Dave's Dugout Top 14 for the 2020-21 season. Finally here. I've been teasing my rankings for so long. And this year, I did it last year too, but not officially. We're going to start a new hashtag, the DD Top 40. I'm going to do a top 14 and a top 40. I did it last year for fun, for me, for my own personal. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I think the top 25 is stupid. I think they should start doing the top 40. Because if you actually look, there are websites too, like Warren Nolan, Tracks. I mean, if you go in order of the AP poll, it goes to 25, and then you get the other teams receiving votes. There's usually about 40, 45 teams anyway. So you might as well put them in order, because they put them in order in a paragraph right underneath. So why not slap a number on those teams? Because then you could promote those games better. You could promote those games for ESPN, for CBS, for anybody who has those games. You could promote it as the 30th team versus the 29th. Or the 5th team versus the 35th. And people would show interest. Right now, it's the 5th team versus the not ranked. Why would you not want more ranked teams? It seems so silly to me that they don't jump up. Like, I don't know. Maybe one day when Dave's Dugout really blows up, we'll get there. They'll listen to me. We'll start doing a top 40. I mean, many people are jumping on that bandwagon. John Rothstein does a top 40. Even Gary Parrish does a top 25 and 1. He even now admits he does like a top 36 and 1 sometimes, just because he's like, people want to know who are the teams that just barely didn't make the cut. So we're getting there. Who else? I'm missing. What's his name? Andy Katz does a Power 36 now rankings. So Yeah, like I said, people are starting to realize that makes more sense. So, Dave's Dugout Top 14 will be coming later in this episode. Stay tuned. A couple things off the top here. I'm just going to touch on quickly because, like I said, we're mostly going to focus on college basketball. And even college basketball, we can't focus on what I really want to because everything's getting canceled. And I almost think if I talk about it on a podcast, it's almost too dated by the time most will be listening because games are literally getting canceled by the minute. I mean, it's crazy. So first, we'll start with the NFL and Monday Night Football last night with my Rams. Okay, am I a little biased? Oh, I added a T there. Yes, but I'm very reasonable. Even here, Kyle Hoffman, jokingly, I love it. I tease that I'm gonna put out my Baylor season preview. He's like, "What are you gonna say? They're national champions, #1." Like, no, I'm realistic with my favorite teams. Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, come on, who doesn't? You gotta roll with your teams sometimes. But anyway, the Rams. People have been sleeping on the Rams. Everybody talking about the Seattle Seahawks. People on Fox Sports Radio preseason picked the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl or make it to the Super Bowl. And they looked really smart through 5 weeks. Russell Wilson was looking like the MVP of the league. I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, the Seahawks are a good team, but right now they're showing flaws. The Saints, without Drew Brees, I don't trust them without Drew Brees. I want Drew Brees to get 100% healthy because I want him to play past this year. I don't want him to rush it back. But is their Super Bowl window closing? Does he need to rush back? I don't know. Packers have been banged up all season long. Don't trust them. I think the Rams, especially after last night, am I overreacting? I like to always say people are too much we're creatures of the moment. We overhype one game, like after they lost to the Dolphins, it was the Rams are terrible. Now it's, they beat the Tampa Bay, so they must be Super Bowl contenders. No, I've been in the same place I am all year. The Rams are one of the best teams in the NFC West, and no one was talking about them. The game against the Bills, they lost. So if they would have been 5-0, I think they would have been one of these top 5 teams everybody was talking about all year long. But they lose the game with a ridiculous call to the Bills, and that would have been like one of the best comebacks of the year if they would have won that game. So you flip a coin. I get it, you got to win the games, but that's just how close that the Rams were to, whatever it was, 6-0, 7-0, whatever, being one of the teams everybody's talking about. So they kind of fell off the radar, which maybe it was good for them. I like it. I mean, I like being outside the top 10. Sure, like, you don't think the Rams are, what? Like, get out of here. Okay, like, we'll see you in the playoffs. And, like, the Rams are good, man. If you didn't watch the Monday Night Football game, they're just good. They're good all around. Jared Goff is a good quarterback. He's, I would say, a great quarterback. I always make fun of people that say he's the system quarterback. He's more than a system quarterback. He was the #1 draft pick. I think people forget this, and they get this, oh, it's all McVay. It's not Goff. Like, it's both. Jared Goff was the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft for a reason. Sean McVay is heralded as one of the smartest offensive minds for a reason. And you put them both together, guess what? They made the Super Bowl 2 years ago. It's not like they have sucked every year. So, and then you add the best player in the NFL, Aaron Donald, and then the best cornerback in the NFL, Jalen Ramsey. And then a lot of the Rams have been drafting really well since the McVay era. You put all these pieces together, I don't know how they're an underdog. I mean, do I think they should be the favorites? Probably not. I don't know if they're that good, but they should be in the conversation with those teams at the top, and they're frequently not. Maybe they will be here now in the next few weeks until they lose, but we'll see. That's just kind of how NFL headlines go, I guess. And then sticking with this is really the only NFL game I'm going to talk about this week, since it's fresh. Is timestamp on the podcast. It's 7:30 Mountain Time, November 24th, Tuesday, after the Monday Night Football game. So I am just surprised, and it's ironic that they played each other because this the comparison I wanted to make is the Tampa Bay. I almost said Tampa Bay Rays. Um, I'm surprised they're not better. I mean, they're good, and everybody's still. I mean, a week ago they were they're everybody's pick to win the Super Bowl or make the Super Bowl. I wouldn't disagree. I think they'll get it going. I thought they were going to start off honestly slower than they did this season with Brady with a new coach. I mean, that's a lot of personalities coming into one locker room. It's a lot. And the comparison I want to make is the Rams team that made the Super Bowl that year. That the Bucks are now what the Rams were that year. The Rams had all this talent. They had Akeem Talib, Marcus Peters. I mean, you bring in Brandon Cooks. You just Todd Gurley. It was just like they have so many weapons. Like you don't even want them on your fantasy team because they just have too many good wide receivers. That's the Bucks now. I mean, they have Mike Evans. They have Antonio Brown. They have Leonard Fournette's not even their starting running back. Leonard Fournette was like a first top 3 fantasy pick a couple of years ago. And he's on their bet. I mean, this is like they have a tremendous amount of talent. I guess one of the red flags last night people are talking about now is they don't have an offensive line. Is that true, or is that just Aaron Donald? I don't know. Probably both. Maybe their offensive line isn't the best, and they went against the best player in the NFL last night. So, I mean, you tend to get people see your flaws when you play super high-quality opponents, and that's what they've been saying why the Bucks aren't good in prime time is because when you have that 1 p.m. kickoff, maybe you're playing the Browns or the Jags, and you're going to win that game. Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, you're usually playing a good team. You're usually playing the Rams. You're playing the 49ers in the beginning of the season. Why am I blanking? Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs. I mean, those are the matchups on Sunday night and Monday Night Football, usually. At least they try to do that as frequently as possible. That's... I don't even know if I got my point across of what I was trying to say about the Bucks. But the Bucks, so Super Bowl contenders. So yeah, with the Rams, I mean, that year the Rams went, what were they, like 8-9-0 at one point, and then they fell off. But hey, guess what? They ended up making the Super Bowl. They didn't win because they ran into the Belichick buzzsaw in the Super Bowl. I mean, he held them to 3 points. It was like the highest scoring offense in NFL, close to in NFL history, and they scored 3 points against Bill Belichick because that's just how he is. I mean, he's the GOAT. So that's what you get there, and it's so is that where the bar is for the Bucks now? If we're going to compare them to the Rams of that year, are they going to make a Super Bowl? I don't know. Maybe they have the talent if they can put it together. I mean, that's one of the things. So I wouldn't hit the panic button, and I wouldn't hit they're going to make the Super Bowl button, which is most people do on a week-to-week basis depending on the outcome of a specific game. So that's all I want to say. College football I wanted to jump into, but I don't think I'm going to. For the main reason is that everything is getting canceled, similarly to college basketball, but college basketball I'm going to talk about regardless. The third thing was Conor McGregor is back again. Guess who's back? He retired. He does this frequently, and now he finds a matchup he likes, and now he's back. And he's going to fight, what's his name, Poirier? I don't know if I said his name right. You know what I'm talking about. They fought years ago. I want to say it was 2012 or 2014. And this was before McGregor was super famous. I actually watched this fight. Go back and watch it. Somebody tweeted it the other day. It's worth it because it's only like 1 minute and 40 seconds long. You can watch the whole fight in a minute. 2 minutes. And McGregor knocks him out. I mean, spoiler alert. It's 5 years old, 6 years old. If I spoiled it for you, I'm sorry. But I thought it was funny. 30 seconds into the fight, the crowd starts chanting USA, USA. So this is before McGregor was like McGregor. And you hear Joe Rogan on the call say, this guy is for real. That's the real deal. Little do we know, he ends up being the champ, whatever we call it. So champ's going to be back in action. That's coming up soon. I'll keep you posted on that. Obviously, week of we'll go over more in depth, and we'll see who else is on the card. All right, I think that means it's time to release the Dave's Dugout top 14 of the 2020-21 season, baby. Do we do it? Let's do it, and then we'll. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, we gotta do it. Let's do it. All right. Number 1. Do we start from the bottom? We'll start from the bottom. We're not gonna start from the bottom from the bottom of the top 40. I would. I think you guys would get bored. I'm gonna post a picture of the rankings, obviously, and let's say I'll highlight a couple teams in my top 40, and then we'll start with 14. I have Syracuse just making the cut as my 40th team. Cuse, Orange Nation, you guys, that might be the first time they're in my top 40. So just making the cut there. I got St. Louis is a nice sleeper non-power conference team. They're sitting at 37. Richmond and UConn, also teams you want to keep an eye on. Who are some other ones? Stanford. I'm high on Stanford. I'm higher than most on Stanford. I have them at 29. Their average is 35 in preseason rankings. As you guys know, I make my whole Excel spreadsheet, and I have multiple rankings that I look at. So, yeah, I'm checking the live stream to make sure it's still going. Michigan, I'm a little lower on. Some things have them as high as 15, as low as 36. So I guess I'm right in the middle. I have them at 28. Alabama, I like at 27. That's right about their average. So they're just a borderline. Watch Alabama. They're not in the top 25 to begin the season, but they'll probably creep up at some point. I'm low on Texas. I'm low on the Longhorns. Horns down, just like football. Everybody's got them hyped up as a top 10 team, top 25 team every year, just like football. And then, boom. Now, there's an asterisk because they have lost their top scorer halfway through the season. I think it's 2 times in the last 3 years, or it's 2 in the last 5 years. I think it's 2 in the last 3. So when you lose your best player halfway through the season, I'm not making excuses, but that's kind of an excuse. Now, happened to Baylor 2 years ago. They lost Justin Clark, and they were just fine. But not everybody has Scott Drew coaching their team. I love throwing in little daggers like that. But, yeah, horns down. I'm low. Ken Palm's got Texas as high as 9. I have them sitting at 25. I put them at the top 25. They're right there on the border. They're in the 25th spot, just making the cut. But most have them around 19. So I'm just a little lower on the Longhorns, way lower than Ken Palm at 9. A team I like, a team I had at 25 until I put the Longhorns there, bumped them up to 24, is Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, you're not going to see in the top 25 rankings to start the year, but Oklahoma State, they're at 35, 33, 39 in other preseason polls. I don't know if Oklahoma State is actually a top 25 team. I actually don't think they... As a team, I don't know. We haven't seen them play yet. They're so young. They're almost like Memphis last year, before Wiseman quit on the team. So get me started on that. But they could have the best player in college basketball on their team. Luka Garza is the preseason All-American Player of the Year for obvious reasons. It's unanimous. I think it's unanimous. I haven't found somebody that disagrees that Luka Garza is not going to... Now, this is fun. I heard this on a college basketball podcast that they're usually wrong. The preseason player of the year is usually not the preseason player of the year, but that only makes sense from a statistical standpoint. There's 350 teams, so that means there's how many players? I mean, that times 5 plus people on the bench. And you're trying to pick one person that's going to be the best player in college basketball, your odds you're terrible. I mean, it's they've been right like 2 times in the last 15 years or something ridiculous like that. So I guess that's obvious, but I guess it's not. So if Luka Garza doesn't end up being the preseason player of the year, it shouldn't surprise you. But right now, there's no reason to think he's not going to be. If that are you following there? Um, but anyway, I'm talking about Oklahoma State. When we talk about the preseason player of the year, is because I think your next shot would be number 2 is Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham is the best freshman coming in, and I think, yeah, he has a really good shot at. I mean, we've seen freshmen one and dones come in and dominate before, and if he's going to be that, he could be that person this year. So, I have them at 24. I think they'll pop in. The point I wanted to make was I think they'll pop in the top 25 at some point this season. I don't know if they're going to sit there all year. Is my long story short. I went off on a rant. I'm sorry. Arkansas is another team I'm high on. 22, baby. They're averaging, low 20s. They're in that. Oh, God, I just lost them. My line. Oh, no, they're only one team voted them 31, one poll. So I'm hot on the Must Bus. And if you like this podcast, you've listened to this podcast before, you know we ride the Must Bus in the dugout. The dugout is in the Must Bus. Or the Must Bus is in the dugout. Can you fit a bus in a dugout? Or can you fit a dugout in a bus? Probably neither. But the people in the dugout also like to ride the Must Bus to get places. Oh my God. What was that? That wasn't in Japan. I'd cut that out. But we let it roll. We let it roll. Florida is a team I think a lot of people are low on because we got burnt last year on them. I'm one of the people. Top 10, I think I had them a top 5 team last year. It didn't work out. It just didn't work. They were a team that did not gel. The talent did not work. They couldn't get it going. Did the season get cut short? Yes. Who would have known? And there's actually news regarding Gonzaga about a former Florida player that maybe we'll get to if we have time. But one guy I'm really high on is Scotty Lewis on Florida. I think Scotty Lewis will have a breakout year or a comeback year. I guess comeback's a better word for it. I think he'll be a comeback player of the year. I think he'll do what we all thought he was going to do last year. So watch out for Florida. Tech, I'm a little lower on. 19. Texas Tech, that is. Some people have them as high as 6. Ken Palm. We're really 14, 13. So just a little lower on Tech. I just think the Big 12 is too good. And I think there's better teams than. Usually Tech's been in that 3rd spot the last 2 years behind Baylor and Kansas. And I think there's 1 or 2 teams now that could be above them. UCLA. You know I love Mick Cronin too. I've been hot on Cincinnati when he was the coach there. Now he's in UCLA. UCLA was one of my sleeper teams. I thought they'd win a game or two in March Madness. We didn't get to see. But UCLA I have at 18. It's higher than most preseason polls. Low as 29, in the 20s. Houston, I love. Houston is a team I have at 17, and I want them in my top 14, but I just can't. I just don't have enough room. In the top 14, you can only have 14 teams. And these next couple are teams I really want. UCLA and Houston are 2 of them. Kentucky's another one. Kentucky's one I want in my top 14 because I think John Calipari will make you look stupid by the end of the year if they're not. And I don't have them because they have the best recruiting class in the country, again, but they don't have, like, the guy. They don't have Cade Cunningham, and they don't have the guy returning. They usually have one older guy. I think they only have one person returning. So, and in a COVID year when you need, like, veterans and mature people to get through this pandemic, I don't know if that's what Kentucky has. So that's my red flag on Kentucky. I mean, everybody else, you almost want to, Kentucky's one of those teams, you should have them in the top 10 because they're Kentucky. And I get that. But they're at 16. I mean, come on. Like, that, it's close. Tennessee is my next team in at 15. They just barely didn't make the cut. The Vols are going to be really good. And the Vols might be the best team in the SEC. West Virginia is my 14th team. The Mountaineers were finished top 5 defense in the country last year. West Virginia was, when the net rankings came out, they were going to be one of the top seeds in March Madness. They've stumbled down the stretch, but who knows if they would have turned it back on in March. Watch out for Huggy. Watch out for Oscar Schwebe. That team is going to be really good. I'm really high on West Virginia. I think West Virginia, if you had to make me guess Big 12 rankings, I'll do it right now on the pod. Baylor, West Virginia, Kansas. How crazy would that be? Kansas not only not winning the Big 12, but coming in third. I think it's very likely, and I think West Virginia is that good. North Carolina, got to shoot them back up into the top 14 after last year. It was Roy Williams' worst year ever. They're UNC. They're with Kentucky and Duke. You got to put them up high because that's who they are. Michigan State, similar. They're number 12. Duke, I'm lower on than most. Usually am. And usually you're wrong because usually they finish as a top 10 team in the country. I've got them at 11. I almost put them in my top 10 just because they're Duke, but I didn't for just to spite. They're 11. I mean, there's 10 really good teams ahead of them. And here they are, our top 10. Kansas Jayhawks, number 10. In the Days Dugout, top 14. The Duke Blue Devils. Oh, no, Duke Blue Devils were 11. Kansas was 10. They lose Devon Dotson. They lose... oh, come on. Blanking on a name. Goodness. Aduka Azumbuki. Thank you. I didn't even look that up. I just popped in my head. Finally. Should have been there quicker than that. So Kansas, top 10 team. Similarly to the argument with Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina. They're Kansas. They're going to be good. They have looming problems. But we'll go down that bridge when we get to it, because who knows if they're going to get punished. They're still recruiting fairly well. If you're college basketball on that, you know what I'm talking about. Number 9 is a team I probably have the most, definitely, now that I'm looking at it, the most difference, the most, I don't know what the word is for it, the most difference in my rankings. Their average ranking is 21. I have them at 9. I have them in my top 10 for the same reasons of the Blue Bloods, but in recent years. Florida State, to me, is pumping out on this level with Baylor and Gonzaga. Underrated every year, top 10 quality team, makes runs in the tournament. I mean, they're consistently in the Sweet 16. They're consistently just like Baylor and Gonzaga. Florida State needs to be in the top 10 as long as Hamilton's coaching that team with the fountain of youth. That man has not aged in 20 years. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Florida State's head coach, fountain of youth. The man literally has not aged. Look at pictures of him. He put us side by side, too. When everybody was doing that 10-year challenge, he did it. And I think he did the 20-year. And he has not changed. It's actually kind of incredible. Google that. And Florida State, I think, is a top 10 team. They are recruiting and putting out talent and NBA draft picks like it's their job, and they're not getting credit for it. They're not, for some reason, people have them outside the top 25 is incredible to me because what? They're not returning people? Neither is Kentucky. Neither is Duke. Neither is Kansas. They don't return people, but guess what? They're pumping it out on a top 10 level. I hope I'm right because put this on the record. Let's cut this segment. Florida State is a top 10 team. Once again, I don't care who's on the team. As long as Leonard Hamilton's coaching, I think they're a top 10 team, and they've showed that the last 5 years, easily. Wow. I got heated there. That was good. And not heated, excited. Wisconsin's a team I'm almost high on because everybody else is. I'll admit that. That's Wisconsin might be, to me, I could be wrong. I mean, I have them number 8 in the country. That's pretty good. I think they'll be good. The Big Ten, though, might be the best conference again in college basketball. Last year they were. They just edged out the Big 12 for the first time in like 9 years. So Wisconsin might get beat up. Wisconsin also might be great. I just think they have the potential, if I had to pick one, to be like the Florida of last year, a top 10 team that everybody's going to be disappointed. I don't know. I don't even have a reason for that. That's just why I'm just least confident in them for some reason in my top 10 teams. Creighton could fit there. That's my number 7 team. Creighton was going to be a top 3, top 4 team if they would have returned everybody, but they lost some talent. So Iowa is number 6, and that's pretty much where everybody has them, 4, 5, or 6. 5 or 6, really. Once you get to the top, it's really, everybody's pretty in agreement. We'll see if we're all wrong. We probably are. But Iowa, I mean, I talked about Luka Garza already. When you return the best player in college basketball, you're probably going to be a top 10 team. The thing about Iowa, they're not good defensively. And they return, do they return all 5 starters or 4 or 5 starters? They return most everyone. And that's not really, defense isn't really something you can just magically get better at. I think 3-point shooting, you can work on your shot in the offseason. I think that's a little easier to fix. Defense, I don't know. If they're going to have the 95th ranked defense again in the country, maybe they're going to be a top 5 offense. It's really hard to be great. It's really hard to make a Final Four. I've heard stats on it that, like 1 or 2 teams have done it, made the Final Four and have a above 90 defensive efficiency. That's going to have to be Iowa. They're going to have to be so great on offense, or they're going to have to get better on defense. Easier said than done. I really do. So, Iowa, they're going to be great all year, but come March Madness, I don't know if your defense has, you have to get better on defense. I mean, they say it, defense wins championships. It's a saying for a reason. So Iowa, sorry, Uncle Vern. Hawkeyes, man, they might disappoint you. Because starting the season ranked 6, I think it's the highest they've ever started a season. The bar is up here for Hawkeyes fans. Watch out. Virginia, this is weird. The defending national champions. Yeah, because we didn't have a tournament last year, so Virginia is still the defending national champions. They could win 3 of the last 5 tournaments. Maybe 3 in the last 6 years, but they could win 3 of the last 5 tournaments. Virginia, I mean, number 1 defense in the country. It's Virginia. Do you really need to say more? I think they've earned that right to be up there. So, they are. If you're not paying attention, there. I actually have them at 5th. Everybody else, most have them at 4th. I have this team ahead of them, though. Illinois, the Fighting Illini. I think that is one of the funnest names to say. I don't know why, but I love the Fighting Illini. I think that's a great name. I have them number 4 because I think they have the best duo in college basketball. When you have the best duo in college basketball, I think your team's going to be pretty damn good. Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn, they were both freshmen last year, both returning. Ayo was probably going to stay in the draft. Kofi Cockburn probably could have got drafted, maybe. They both return. I think Illinois is the team to beat in the Big Ten. Illinois, my number 4 team, Dave's Dugout. You heard it here first, as everybody else has them 6, 8, 10, and 17 in KenPom. So Dave's got them at 4. I'm high on the Fighting Illini. Yeah, baby, let's go. Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn going for the win there. And then the top 3. I've said this before on the podcast, before I even release the rankings. Your top 3 need to be Villanova, Gonzaga, and Baylor in some order. I have Villanova 3. Most people do. If you put them at 1, you have an argument. I think it's not as strong as Gonzaga and Baylor at number 1, but if you have Villanova at 1, I'm not going to spend time arguing with you. Villanova's 3. Jay Wright. So good. Come on. What else do you say? Now here's number 2 and number 1. I really think you could flip a coin, and I actually was going to flip a coin to see who I had ranked number 1, especially after today's news. Today's news is Andrew Nembhard from the Florida Gators last year got a waiver to play right away, so he is part of the Gonzaga Bulldogs now. I was gonna say I would have flipped a coin, but I didn't know how to decide who would get heads and who would get tails. Baylor heads, Gonzaga tails, or Gonzaga heads, Baylor tails. I don't know. So I just my bias might have kicked in. I have Gonzaga ranked number 2 and Baylor ranked number 1. Most polls, it's 50-50. Coaches poll has Baylor 1, AP poll has Gonzaga 1. Literally by 1 point. The AP poll, if you don't know, you get 1 point for being ranked 25th, and you get 25 points for being ranked 1. So like the rankings are like 1,400 points. It was literally 1,441 to 40. Like it was 1 point difference between Baylor and Gonzaga in the AP poll. That's crazy close. It's razor thin. Now, the Andrew Nembhard news literally today, this morning, might and should jump Baylor for the number 1 spot. The only reason I didn't is because Nembhard didn't play like we thought he was going to in Florida. Maybe he will under Mark Few, but he's new. He's not a returning player. He's a returning player to college basketball. He's not a returning player to Gonzaga, if that makes sense. So I don't know how he'll fit in. We've never seen him play there. Give it a week. Give it 2 weeks. Let's see him play. Maybe then you change your rankings and they're number 1. They are number 1. You know what I mean? So it's razor thin. The only reason I stuck with my guns and kept Baylor at number 1, preseason number 1, is because they returned more people. If Baylor would have returned, this is the news too with Baylor, is Tristan Clark. If they would have returned Tristan Clark as well, I think Baylor, even with Nembhard, would be number 1, and I don't think it would be as close. People still had it for some reason. If I would have done this podcast 5 days ago, Tristan Clark was still on the team, and people still had them 2 for some reason. I thought Tristan Clark, well, he was statistically one of the best players his sophomore year before he tore his ACL or whatever the knee injury was. He had the best field goal efficiency in college basketball, the best out of every player. I think if he would have been able to return to that form, which we didn't see last year back, he had the knee brace, he never looked 100%, he never played a lot of minutes. Some coaches say, though, that next year coming back from a knee injury is when you see the jump. So I thought this year would be the year we'd see the jump, maybe back to what he was sophomore year. And if he was, I said, well, you're putting that type of player, one of the best players in the country, on a team that was ranked number 1 in the country for longer than any other team last year. People lose sight of that. Baylor was ranked number 1 for longer than anyone. Kansas finished number 1, but Baylor was ranked number 1 for the longest. And you put Tristan Clark on that, I thought was the jump. Tristan Clark released via his Twitter account that he's retiring from basketball with all the rehab and everybody. He said his body just can't be back to what it was. To, I guess, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, but to make him happy. He wants to focus on the next chapter in life. I think it was Matt Norlander talked to Scott Drew and said Scott Drew made it sound like Tristan Clark is totally at peace with this, and you have to credit the kid. I mean, because there has to be life after college basketball, and it sounds like that's the step he wants to make next. So you have to be happy for Tristan Clark. From a college basketball standpoint, obviously it's a loss for the team, but for his personal growth, it sounds like nothing but a fantastic thing for him. So we have to, and you have to accept, I mean, you have to be happy for him, you have to accept that. So Baylor returns 4 or 5 starters. Tristan Clark technically wouldn't have been a starter, but he was a starter 2 years ago. Freddie Gillespie was his replacement, but now we have to replace Freddie Gillespie, who is becoming a household name as one of the best stories in college basketball last year before the tournament got canceled. We've talked about that before in the past, though. Speaking of, he got free agent picked up by the Dallas Mavericks, so congratulations to him. I believe Anthony Lamb also got picked up, was undrafted. I'll talk more about the draft, I guess, in a second. Who is going to be the 5th starter for Baylor is the question, because everybody knows they're a top 1 or top 2 team in the country, and they return 4 or 5 starters, and that's why But I think the question is, who's the fifth? There is no official word on who is the fifth. But I believe it will probably be Matthew Meyer. I don't know for sure. Obviously, I don't have a direct source on that. My only thought process, for me, I would do it because he had such hot streaks last year on offense. And this was such a great defensive team. If he can step up his defense, I think he would be a great offensive weapon for them as the fifth starter. I mean, he would go on 6 and 8 point scoring streaks just by himself when coming off the bench. So if this kid got hot all year on offense, you're talking number one team in the country type output. I mean, they would be better offensively, and I think they're only going to get better defensively because they're all another year older now. And Mark Vidal, preseason defensive player of the year for obvious reasons. I mean, Mark Vidal just absolutely hustles, and if you love that type of athlete or type of person, that's a reason to watch Baylor this year, is Mark Vidal. He's just so much fun to watch. He was the first player to announce that he was coming back. Obviously, he wasn't as highly touted on NBA draft boards as the other guys, but he was weeks before the deadline, before he had to, he put on Twitter, I'm coming back to Baylor. I'm bringing a Big 12 championship. It would be the first ever in Baylor's program history to win the regular Big 12 title. He said, I'm coming back to win the Big 12 title. They didn't get a chance to last year because it got canceled the day before the tournament was supposed to start, the Big 12 tournament. And he said, I'm going to come back and bring a national championship to Waco. And that's what that team is set out to do. And I really do. I ended my season preview article for Busting Brackets, which go check that out. That's up online. It's on Facebook and Twitter if you need the link. I ended it with, I think Scott Drew and the Bears are going to do everything in their power to get to the Final Four to make up for last year. Teams like San Diego State and Dayton, BYU was a sleeper, not to make the Final Four, but they were having those types of years that Baylor was. It was the best in program history. Baylor's one of the few teams that has a shot for redemption at it. I mean, Dayton lost Malachi Flynn. Dayton lost Obi Toppin. Baylor's bringing everybody back. They're rolling it back. They're running it back. They really are. They were a number one seed that didn't get a chance to win. The other two were Dayton and San Diego and Kansas. Kansas lost everybody. Dayton lost everybody. San Diego State lost everybody. Baylor's the only one bringing everybody back. Gonzaga, I mean, they're right there. They're right there, but they're not bringing everybody back. But then again, they didn't last year either, and they still won 31 games, or however many games they won. So Gonzaga is one of those teams that they can lose I think they lost 2 of their 3 top scorers, but they'll still be great. They'll still be one of the best teams in the sport. So that's my top 14. It's my top 40, technically. I gave you the whole thing. So Dave's Dugout, top 14, top 40. We'll be back weekly. I'll do it Mondays, probably just like the AP poll and coaches poll. This year is going to be crazy. I'm not going to get into all the cancellations for obvious reasons. I said it in the beginning of the episode because I think it'll be too dated. I mean, it'll change tomorrow. So I talked about Justin Clark. Talk about the NBA draft real quick because it's college basketball related. These are just names of people I think you're going to know in a few years in the NBA. My number 1 is Obi Toppin. I think Obi Toppin was the best player in the NBA draft. He did not go number 1. Luckily for me, he went number 8. He fell to 8 somehow and got drafted by the New York Knicks. I'm stoked. I have said it on the podcast before. I'm boycotting the Knicks until they show me that they want to start winning. I don't want to be a bandwagon fan, and I don't want to ditch a team for being bad. But the Knicks are an exception of they've been so bad for so long and not trying to win that I'm not going to... Like the Rams I stuck with. I watched them every Sunday when they were terrible, when they were winning 3 games a year. The Knicks are not showing me that they're trying to win. This might change things. I don't know. They've made some other good moves in the offseason now. Maybe Obi Toppin is the guy that changes them because they can't get much worse. I mean, really, it's sad, but the biggest basketball city in the country. I mean, it's the mecca of basketball is New York City, and they have one of the historically worst programs. It's incredible. Not incredible. It's the opposite of incredible. It's devastating. It's terrible. It's awful. I'm trying to think of a word that it is. Depressing. I don't know. All right, number 2 on my list also fell in the draft, maybe because of injury. Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton, I think, is going to be. I think he has one of the best shots. 10, 12 years down the line, we're still looking at Tyrese Halliburton in the league. I don't know if he's an all-star. Maybe he's like a one-time all-star, couple-time all-star. I don't know if he'll make that hump, but I think he's got a hell of a shot. Jalen Smith is my number 3. Malachi Flynn is, again, Dayton. So that's crazy. 2 of my 4 people were both on Dayton last year, which is sad that Dayton to get a shot at the Final Four because they probably would have gotten drafted higher, Obi Toppin and Malachi Flynn, if people would have watched them in the Final Four. I mean, that's just how we are. Jemias Ramsey of Tech, was it 2 years ago in the national championship? Absolutely balled out. And when you ball out in the national championship on the biggest stage in college basketball, I kind of think you're going to be good in the pros. There's just something some people have that in the moment winner instinct and mentality and can turn it on when the lights are the brightest. That kid clearly has it to me. So he's my number 5 in my 5 people you want to watch. And then I was told to pick a higher or lower. Higher, I'm going Cassius Winston. I'm higher on Cassius Winston this year. Yeah, he fell in the NBA draft, and I don't think he should have. Is he the most athletic guy? It's so funny. Everybody says this. Is he the most athletic? No. Like, dude's an athlete, and you gotta love his terribly sad story last year. Losing his brother made one of the saddest but most compelling stories in all of college basketball last year, and seeing them potentially make a Final Four would have been, I don't even know how you put that into words. But losing his brother to suicide last year was just absolutely devastating, and to see him come back and just play at the high level he was supposed to. He was the preseason player of the year last year. Was crazy. I don't even know how to say it. So I'm higher on him than he got drafted. And I'm lower on LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball was projected to be the 1 overall pick. I think, what did he end up going, 3? So I guess he's a little, that's fine to me. I think he's in that 3 to 7 range. I didn't think he should have been number 1. And he didn't go number 1, so I guess I was right. Maybe I could be shown wrong, but I am not super high on LaMelo. So here's just my honorable mentions. These are all guys. Some of them fell in the draft. Some of them didn't get drafted. I already mentioned Freddie Gillespie and Anthony Lamb. They're my last 2 on the list. This is in order of what ESPN had ranked before the NBA draft. This was their, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Onyeka Okongwu, I had really high. Isaac Okoro. I think it's Patrick Williams, right? I just have the first initial for those guys, so I had to come up with those on the top of my head. Sadiq Bey, I'm high on. Tyler Bey, both Beys. Xavier Tillman from Michigan State. I think Izzo coached guys are just prepared for the NBA more than others. Daniel Oturu. Peyton Pritchard from Oregon, I think could be a role player in the NBA for a long time. I don't know if he'll make that all-star jump, but Peyton Pritchard, I think, has the stuff to be around for a long time. Jordan Nora from Louisville was so good. Devon Dotson fell in the draft. He was one of the best players on Kansas. I think he's going to be good. Killian Tilly from Gonzaga. He's one of the reasons I don't have Gonzaga number 1. It's because they lost Killian Tilly. Marcus Howard was arguably one of the best players in college basketball last year. I like his work ethic. I think he's going to be better than he got drafted. Tyshawn Alexander, Caleb Wesson, Miles Powell. Miles Powell and Marcus Howard are the 2. I actually think I was thinking of Miles Powell was terrific. Seton Hall, right? I feel like I get Marcus Howard was Marquette. They were both terrific. And then my last 2 are Freddie Gillespie and Anthony Lamb, like I've said. Wow, this is good. I've just been vibing. I like this is me not doing a lot of research before the podcast, and I can still ramble for an hour compared to most. Are we at the hour mark? We're getting close. 45 minutes. Good. That's where I like to keep it. Bang. I mean, that was college basketball without talking about all the games and cancellations. The only thing is sad for us. I think actually I had this written down. Yes, it was the 2K Classic. So usually the college basketball season starts in recent years with the Champions Classic, and it's some form of Duke, Michigan State. Who are the other two? Oh, no. Kansas. I'm not going to get to the fourth, am I? Damn it. And Kentucky. Wow. Yes, trivia time, baby. Nailed my own trivia time. We usually start with the Champions Classic. Those 4 teams rotate and play each other to start the season. And it's a good way to get everybody excited about the season because those are usually, they're probably all in the top 10 every year. This year, though, the 2K Empire the 2K Classic, 2K Empire Classic, played at Madison Square Garden normally. What I think, arguably, I just do think it was going to be better than the Champions Classic this year because we had number 1, this is AP poll rankings, number 1 Gonzaga versus number 12 Tennessee. I have, what are they, 2 and 8 in my rankings? And then number 2 Baylor and number 8 Illinois. Dude, that's like they're all almost in the top 10. Tennessee misses it by 2 spots in the AP poll, and some people's there in the top 10. So all top 10 matchups. And now we're not going to see any of them because of COVID. So thanks a lot, COVID. The Vols had some guys test positive, so they're out. Baylor, Scott Drew tested positive, so they're out. I don't know if Illinois had anybody test positive. I think Gonzaga's been good so far. But I think that's just a shame. I mean, because we're supposed to have, so that was supposed to be like the 3rd, 5th day of the season, whatever. Baylor was going to start the year. It would have been 2 Baylor versus 18 Arizona State. That game also canceled because of the Scott Drew testing positive news. And we probably would have seen number 2 Baylor versus number 3 Villanova because so Baylor had the bigger chance there to get upset at playing the 18 team. Villanova is number 3, and they were playing, I believe it was Boston College. So, Boston. I said Boston weird. Boston College. That was a terrible Boston accent. Anyway, so likely, barring any upsets, it would have been number 2 Baylor versus number 3 Villanova the second day of the season. So we would have had some great matchups first 2 days of the season. Now we do not. Still, ranked teams are playing tomorrow and the next day, but we don't have the ranked versus ranked or the top 10 versus top 10 or the 2 versus 3 matchups that we're hoping for. The closest Baylor game or closest Gonzaga I think still is scheduled to play Kansas. Kansas is a top 10 team. And we still have on the schedule as of right now, and I'm recording, fingers crossed this doesn't get canceled, please, is Baylor versus Gonzaga, December 4th in Indianapolis. For the love of God, please let that game go as scheduled. The number 1 versus number 2 teams in the country, Gonzaga versus Baylor. That will settle the argument of who should be 1 and who should be 2. Oh, that's how you start the season. That's why I'm so excited. And that's where we'll end the episode. I think that's a great spot to end, is in a year where we don't know when games are going to get canceled, you just have to enjoy the ones we're going to get. And we're going to get college basketball tomorrow. And that's where we stand. That's where we just have to accept it. That's what it is. I mean, if we can consistently, I think we're at 90% right now. If we can consistently get 80% of the games every night that are supposed to happen, that's a win. I think, right? I mean, that's at least 80% of college basketball that's happening. Do we want 100%? Obviously. Will I take over 50? Well, I take 1. Will I take 1%? I'd take 1 game every night. I'd be watching the 231st team versus the 278th team. Let's hope it doesn't get that bad. But yeah. that's an episode. That's the 90th episode of Dave's Dugout. I thank you guys for tuning in live. And thank you for tuning in on Instagram. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, please like, subscribe, tell your friends. The Dugout is back to DD Top 14, maybe. Dave's Dugout Top 14. Dave's Dugout Top 40. It's a thing. All right. Signing off on Instagram. We will see you guys next time. And then over here on the tube of you, I appreciate you guys. And for the pod. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.